Welcome back to another edition of Post Media's Ottawa Senators panel. I'm Ken Warren with Bruce Garriock, and special guest this week, Tim McKee. He's a Post Media sales consultant, but the ultimate Senators fan who can give us some insight from a fan's perspective. Don Brennan will be back next week. He was at the Super Bowl. He'll be back, and then we'll get around to our regular rotation. But for now, it's going to be interesting to have Tim and his perspective. Guys, I think we have to start again. It's the topic, the never-ending topic here is what's going to happen before the February 25th trade deadline. Bruce, it's all about Matt Duchene. It's all about Mark Stone, Ryan Dzingel. We can add to the list because you got Cody Ceci, possibly Craig Anderson. What's going to happen here?
Well, it's going to be interesting, obviously, over the next 3 weeks or so to see exactly where the Ottawa Senators go and what they do with this team and what shape this team takes for the future. It's obvious to me that, I think they're still confident that they can sign Mark Stone. I absolutely believe they have some work to do on that front. From listening to Matt Duchene when the team held a practice after 8 days off Thursday in Pittsburgh, I don't get any sense whatsoever that he's staying here. I get a sense that although he's not saying it publicly, there's a pretty good chance that he's going to move on. If he's going to stay, he's going to need some convincing to stay that this rebuild is headed in the direction, Tim, that he wants it to head in. But my sense from this right now is, look, obviously all eyes are going to be on Stone and Duchene. Let's start with those two. I think Stone, there's still an opportunity. I think Duchene, the chances are better that he's going to be dealt, Tim.
And I think from the fans' perspective, too, we're watching, Matt Duchene possibly going away, and we lost Kyle Turris to bring in Matt Duchene. So, that's one of those pieces that's really upsetting for the fan base as well.
Well, I look at this, though, and I go, oh, okay, that was a gamble they lost. They thought, okay, Matt Duchene, here's going to be a run to a Stanley Cup. He said it himself, that he thought, that they were one of those elite teams that had a shot at it, and I can buy that. To me, if you're going to lose Matt Duchene here, make a great deal, and as great as possible deal you can, and you're going to have to move on. If Matt Duchene's not going to be here, you better make a good deal.
Yeah, bring in somebody either that's hockey ready or a really high draft pick, because again, that's another thing that we lose with Matt Duchene is we lost that first round pick in this spring's draft.
That's
right?
a colossal thing.
Well, you got to get three pieces. You got to get a first round pick. You've got to get a high end prospect, and you've got to get at least another sort of mid-range prospect or a player who can help right away.
Okay, so we talked about, now the Mark Stone one is going to be interesting, and whether he needs, we talk about money up front and signing bonuses. I think that might be a key is are you going to guarantee him some of these things that the big names get? But that's when you're saying these are the things you're going to have to finalize. But there's other parts that on this team: Ryan Dzingel, Cody Ceci, Craig Anderson, Bruce. Is there a remote chance they lose Craig Anderson here?
Well, my personal feeling is they should not trade Craig Anderson, but maybe somebody's looking for a short-term solution for their team. He's still got a year left at $4.5 million, so I think it would be difficult to move that contract at this juncture. As far as Dzingel and Ceci go, I think that teams have certainly been calling on Cody Ceci, and I think there's some interest there. I think that the Senators feel that one of the areas where they have some depth is on defense. They've got some young players in Belleville that they feel could step in right away. I don't know who's going to take Cody Ceci's minutes. For a guy who gets criticized as much as he does, he plays 23 to 24 valuable minutes a game. As far as Ryan Dzingel goes, the asking price for him is a first-round pick. I think he will likely be moved before the deadline, but I've stated this several times, Tim. He has to be a little bit patient himself, because perhaps if things fall with Stone and Duchene, there's still room to sign him.
Yeah, and he would be a good piece to keep around as that guy fitting into that second or third line down the road for a few more years while the rest of the boys are getting maturity and getting experience in the NHL game.
I just want to, before we finish on that topic, I just think Cody Ceci, I know you're saying he's playing 23, 24 minutes, but he's not suited for the role in that 23 to 24 minutes. Are they going to sign him to $4 million, $4.5 million, which is what he would be as if he got his qualifying offer? I can't see it happening, so I think move on. If you have the depth, move on and try to find somebody that can fill that role.
Well, and maybe it's time for a change of scenery for both sides, right? Sometimes, you think you can do something with a player. Maybe both sides feel now, Ken, that maybe it's time. Maybe Cody Ceci wouldn't mind the move either, because he's become a lightning rod for criticism here. There's no question about it.
So, which leads us into, is all of this stuff we're talking about with Duchesne, Stone, Ceci, Anderson, Dzingel, I mean, it's got to be. I mean, as much as those guys say, oh yeah, we block it out, and you go in the dressing room, that's bull. They don't block it out. It's a factor. They've lost 4 in a row. They came back from the break, looked a little bit very uninspired against Detroit Saturday. They're going into Toronto, which is like a nightmare in terms of media and hype, and oh my gosh, if we thought they were getting attention now, you imagine the attention on Duchesne and Stone this week. Is it affecting morale, and how do you deal with that, Bruce?
Well, you were there for what Mark Borvietsky said on the weekend, and Dylan DeMello essentially said the same thing to me in Pittsburgh on Friday, that you don't block this out. Everybody's watching social media, Tim. Everybody's looking to see what happens. People want to find out if Stone and Duchesne are going to stay. I think this is going to play itself out here, but I do think that come February 10th, the Senators have to give, certainly in Duchesne's case, they have to give them a deadline to tell them they need to know what they're going to do. Otherwise, this distraction will just continue on, Tim.
Yeah, and I think it's funny, on Saturday's game, you say uninspired. I think they were all more concerned about doing their video shot with Dylan DeMello about who was going to win the Super Bowl game. Like, that really seemed to be the most inspiring thing that the Sens did on Saturday, was prepare that video.
I guess, okay, we've talked, these guys, something is going to happen on that front. From a fan, maybe we'll ask you here, Tim, when you look at the next wave, and there is some potential here. There is some potential, and the latest guy here that's getting a long look is Rudolph Balcers. Mm-hmm. Earlier in the year we talked about Max Lajoie, and he's struggled lately. Christian Jaros, who's been up and down but looks like a player. And they've got Christian Wolanin. We'll see what happens on the injury front with him down in Belleville. But there is some prospects with Balcers. I mean, are you watching it? Do you see some life, some energy in this guy?
I saw a ton of energy in him on Saturday. He was one of the 2 or 3 guys that looked like he was given 100% every shift. He's fast. He's got a hockey head, and that was the loudest post I've heard in that rink in a long time.
Straight in, straight out. Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that they've tried to do is they've tried to give the young players opportunity. I think we've kind of seen some guys level off a little bit. I think Brady Tkachuk has struggled of late, but he's still a good prospect. Colin White is coming back from shoulder surgery. Shoulder injury, pardon me. He was having a good season before he got hurt. I think he's become a guy they can rely on. I will be interested to see if they do move these guys out, who comes up, because I know they want to make the playoffs in Belleville, and people have talked about Batherson and Logan Brown and guys like this, and Christian Wolanin, who got hurt in Belleville the other night. But I think they want to make the playoffs in Belleville, so it's kind of a double thing here where I think they're going to keep guys in Belleville because they want to make the playoffs.
Well, if they lose 2 or 3, well, again, it's who you get in return of those trades. But I look at it and I say, if you're going to be out of the playoffs, if you're going to finish near the bottom, and this is tricky with having lost that draft pick, but from an NHL point of view, I'd like to see the prospects and say, hey, it worked with Colin White last year. You brought him in at the end of the year, and he got enough experience. Yeah, and they got enough experience that they were ready for the NHL this year. Yeah. What would you rather see? Would you an AHL winning team or success here or experience here?
Or AHL up here, right? Let's let those young guys get a chance. Let them see the speed of the game. We understand after February 10th, going back to Bruce's point, once we know what's going on with Dzingel and Stone and Duchesne, maybe it is a good time to say, okay, you know what? We said it was a rebuild year. Let's give the rebuild guys a really good shot at this.
I think so. And before we wrap up here, I think, over top of all of this on-ice stuff and what happens is the bigger picture with the other topic that never goes away, and that's LeBreton and what's going to happen. Mediation, there is a deadline for February 28th to get something done. Nobody says that is a drop-dead necessarily date, but they are starting to talk. We're on the outside looking in at this thing. I think everybody wants to get a deal done. It's just a matter of you've got a lot of stubborn people put together in a room trying to get something ironed out here.
Yeah, and I think to this point the discussions have been around with the mediator have been tertiary about what are the problems and how do you want to deal with these problems and what do you see as. I think they're getting down to brass tacks now. these talks are about teed up. There are at least 3 days of meetings planned this week in Toronto, including the principals, John Ruddy and Eugene Melnick, in these discussions. And I think that these talks are now going to go. A mediator, my understanding, just from when the NHL talks were mediated, the mediator doesn't bring the groups together until he sees a solution. So they're not at that point yet. The mediator will meet with Ruddy for a couple days. Then I think he'll meet with Melnick for a couple of days, and then I think they'll go from there. I think the fact that they've agreed to mediation, Tim, is a positive sign, though.
Yeah, and again, as a fan, but as a resident of Ottawa, I'm looking at that space thinking we can't afford to mess this up again. It's got to get fixed, and wouldn't it be fantastic if it does involve the SENS?
Well, what I thought was very interesting is that DevCorps is invited into that group. And we saw the outgoing chair of the NCC, Christensen, say, hey, there's a deal here. We don't want to let this go. So I'm wondering, and I'm not inside that room. NCC says we want something done now with or without a rink. Yeah. And if that's the case, then does the leverage tip away from Melnick?
No, because there has to be a rink.
It's a development project to me on
what
the
are you going to put LeBreton Flats if you don't have a rink?
I think it's a development project on water. I do.
Not a chance.
Anyway, that's the way. That's good. I mean,
you guys
we
are
agree
the
to
experts.
disagree on that. Well, no, we're not. Not on real estate.
No.
But I just see it as a development project.
Yeah.
Hey, take care, guys. That's our week post media. We'll be back next week with a new panel. Thanks very much.